and welcome to the first episode of our podcast, 26 Letters. The 26 letters of the alphabet that are going to focus on a resilient-minded way of living. Joining me today is Christine Heyman, and I am Margaret DeLillo Story. Chris?
We were inspired to call this podcast 26 Letters because of how many times in life we say, well, plan A didn't work, so we have to go to plan B. And as a classroom teacher, we've learned that 26 letters, we have 26 letters. Forget plan B, we have to go all the way to Z. So we are going to talk in each podcast about a letter.
And one of the things that we're going to do, obviously today being the first time, we're going to focus on the letter A. What we started to think about is, unfortunately, with the situation in our world, people are sad, people are confused. There's just so much stuff going on. And what we know is trauma. We understand trauma. What we've chosen not to do is to stay stuck in trauma. So not to stay stuck means we have to muster up whatever it is within us to become resilient-minded and action-focused. And so we are going to look at today the letter A. And Chris, why don't you begin?
Well, I thought about the word action. Thank you for saying that. But in getting to it, I thought of some other letters. So I'm going to weave in some thoughts for you. I had lunch this week with a very dear friend, and we did the typical, "How are you?" And she just stopped and looked at me and said, "I'm angry." And we got quiet. So for a long time, if you've had a lady lunch, you know what that's like. We talked about that. Why was she angry? And it occurred to me that we all are kind of anxious right now. We are kind of living in an atmosphere of fear, anxiety, the uncertainty. We don't know what's going to happen. And if you've ever gotten a diagnosis or had a test, a physical test, and they say, we'll let you know how it is in 3 days, those 3 days are when you think of your worst case scenarios. And that's what anxiety does to us, and kind of the permeating feeling of the whole atmosphere that's kind of heavy on us, and it feels like it's very smothering. And we don't want to stay there. So what we're going to talk about today is what we can do when we're feeling kind of that tight feeling in the chest.
Right, and that anxiety comes from fear, the
Yes,
unknown.
it does.
Fear the unknown, I don't know, and therefore I can't control. And so now I become scared, and so anxiety heightens, which then requires us to do something.
Exactly, and it's physical. So the other A word that I thought of was amygdala, with a little bit of neuroscience. For the amygdala is in our midbrain, close to the hippocampus, and it's part of our limbic system, and it's where we feel emotions, and it also helps us understand the emotions and feelings of others. We need our amygdala to keep us safe because it gives us our fight and flight feeling. You know, I can handle this, I can't handle this, where do I go from here? And it sends us messages to our bodies to release cortisol.
And I then went ahead, when you're talking about the action and you're talking about the amygdala, you know, you take a look and you talk about one of my A's is accountability. Mm-hmm. I think we get so good as a nation, as human beings, as individuals, for whatever reason, and I'm going to say lack of control and fear, that we don't do a good job of taking accountability. And accountability can be as simple as saying, man, I screwed that up. And Lord knows, I screw a lot of things up a lot of the time, and I have no issue taking accountability. I think where we have issue is we're uncertain of the fallout when we take accountability, or when we acknowledge I'm not perfect and I made a mistake. So I think part of moving toward resiliency is I have to look at, what am I accountable for? And what am I accountable? How am I accountable for making changes that directly cause me to move forward? Because I'm comfortable here. I can stay stuck here because I know here. But making the choice to move forward, to have that action, to be accountable, means I'm going to face some unknowns, and that can be scary, hence anxiety.
Well, it makes us feel helpless and hopeless, and that is a terrible, terrible feeling. So when we go into fight, flight, or freeze, we can consciously say, no, I have to move forward. What can I do? And that's where action comes.
Absolutely.
And I like the word accountability because I used to tell my students, it means what you do counts. And so the action you take counts, and it helps you become more confident and feel less helpless and hopeless. And so that's where I kind of think we all are in our accountability place. What do we do about it? What can I do about it? I can't change the world. I can't
No.
even sometimes respond to others' opinions, attitudes, and ideas. All I can do is try to keep myself moving forward with some kind of positive action.
100% agree. And we all know that, ideas only ever stay great ideas unless an action is put out there to do that. And I think that that's, again, where the anxiety comes from is I might be an island doing it, but I'm going to do it. One of my other A's for today was armor. And I think that, you talk about, Brene Brown says it, with armored leadership versus daring leadership. And I think right now in the scenario that we're in, we're all leaders in our own right, and we're all leaders of different levels and different degrees. How we lead is what's going to help people's fear and anxiety to lessen. If I come at you with a very thick armor, I have to step back and think, gosh, why is my armor so thick? And what I might find out is there's fear. There's fear in being seen. There's fear in not being accepted, another A word. And there's the fear of I can't be an authentic leader because you may not respect my authenticity. But I don't know any other way to be, okay? I'm not asking for you to like what I'm saying and sharing, but I am saying and sharing it from my own perspective. And that's exactly where I have to go with it. And so the authenticity, the armor, it's part of who we are as human beings. To lessen that armor is how we're going to go ahead and move forward with action.
And I had to be accountable for forgetting to turn my cell phone off. I'm sorry, Margaret.
Oh,
I know.
Your action, your lack of an action is not my cause for anxiety.
Oh my gosh.
Do that armor thought over again and
Or,
edit that out.
or do we leave it in? Because I said I had to be accountable for it.
Fine too.
Whatever you guys say, I
Let's
don't
leave
care.
it in.
Yeah. It was,
All right.
yeah.
Well, are we back on, Keith?
Yep.
So, I have to throw in one I hadn't thought of, and that is apology.
Oh, yeah.
I am sorry that my cell phone went off.
Oh, well, you can't help it.
Oh, yes, you could. I could have done that. I did not.
Right. But that would then go to absent-minded.
Oh,
Which also.
I own it.
Yeah, that's right.
And ADHD.
Yes.
We've talked about that.
Absolutely.
But, learning to affirm people and learning to apologize as we're in this very, very tough time.
Yeah.
To support each other and acknowledge, another A, and acknowledge that it isn't easy for any of us.
And right now, I think that's the most important thing to acknowledge is these times are not easy. And I wish to God we had answers for you. I wish we could get on here and say, listen, if you do A, B, C, and D, everything is going to be fine. That's not the case. And I think anybody that tells you that or that there's a drop-down menu for any of this is not being truthful with you. What we have to come to realize is our world is extremely different right now. The whole nation is traumatized. And then you can bring that down from the national level to the country level, to the state level, right here to our own little county, to our families, to our schools. And that's where we step back and say, you know what is my part in this? What can I choose to be accountable for? And what action can I take for the greater good? And it may be me starting it, and who can I rally around and collect to make that continue? Otherwise, it continues to be an idea, and we sit here talking about all the things that need to happen, but there's nobody stepping up to meet the need.
Well, and if you want to go to needs, we also look at ourselves. I think of abracadabra, that's another A, by the way, not on my list. But if we had a magic wand, what would you do? And I think you start with yourself, and I thought of something, Margaret. Margaret loves yoga. She does yoga, she loves yoga. What does it do for you? Just quick, because I hate yoga. I've tried yoga. I'm a dropout, and we've talked about that, and I admire your love for yoga.
Yeah, I don't know if it's as much of a love as it is a necessity.
It works for you.
It does. For me, it just gives me some time and the space in my mind. I need to focus on nothing but, gosh, right now this hurts, and why does it hurt? Or to take the deep breath or say, you know what, this kind of feels good, or this is a little bit of a release. So for me personally, it just gives me that little bit of space I need on the mat to be quiet and allow thoughts to gather. And usually that's when my action plans come into play, because I don't have anything else coming in to flood my brain when I'm there for those few minutes, or 30 to be exact, on my mat.
And for me, I've spent a lot of time and paid a lot of people to try to enjoy yoga, and I can tolerate it, but I like to knit. And how about you, Margaret? Knitting's very regulating for me. I feel very relaxed.
Yeah.
I remember what you said to me once about the knitting needles.
Yeah, I'd rather stick them in my eye or in my eardrums before I made a blanket or a sweater.
So the magic wand and the abracadabra, it's different for everybody.
It absolutely is. And I think that's the thing that we also have to remember when we're looking at these 26 letters of resiliency. My A's are going to be totally different than Chris's A's, and totally different than any of you listening's A's. But the challenge is, sit and be mindful for a minute. What are the A's that I need to move toward a more resilient-minded way of living? Because if you don't have A's that propel you forward, if you don't have A's that are positive in some sort of a way, you are going to stay stuck in the stuff that you're in. And you can sit and tell 25 people, I hate where I'm at. I don't like this. This sucks. This stinks. But then you have to step back and say, what am I doing about it? Because if you count on the infamous they, we're going to be having the same conversation 1 month from now, 1 year from now, 10 years from now, and you're not going to have made any progress forward because you don't have a handle on what are my A's. And it begins somewhere, so let's begin with the letter A.
A's change. They change.
Oh, gosh,
But A is autonomy, and just the belief that you have personal power over the decisions that you make. And we are all in it. It's not even one day at a time right now.
Oh, no.
It's like one decision at a time.
It's 1 minute at a
1
time,
minute
one
at a
breath
time,
at a
one
time.
relationship at a time, one
Absolutely.
conference at a time, one conversation at a time. But to understand the power in your A.
And I think, that, looking at that power piece in our A's, I know during COVID, I'm just going to say from when it began in March to where we are at now, because COVID is still ever present. It is not gone. All we have done is find ways to adjust, another A, find ways to adjust to living in these very changed times. One of the things that I have found people are doing personally within their families, their spirituality, within your workplaces is we are reassessing.
Yes.
Okay? And when we're reassessing, we're taking stock of what matters and what doesn't. And I know for me personally, very quick, I learned to appreciate in some ways, appreciate another A, in some ways, what COVID did for my life personally. And when I say that, please don't misunderstand. There are so many things that I don't like about what it did, but the one thing I like that it did do is it did make me stop, think, and appreciate what really matters in my life at this stage of my life. And what I found that for me, it's time, and it's time with those people that I love and care for. It's not things, and it's not running and going and going. And COVID caused me to slow down. It caused me to take in and acknowledge, wow, I was pretty busy. Yeah. And so I'm very appreciative of when things shut down, I had to slow down. And in that slowdown, I did a lot of reassessing. Do I need to stop at the store every single day of the week? Do I need to run and do this every single day of the week? Can I just sit back and say, wow, and appreciate the moment that I'm living in? And that, for me, is kind of the positive side, if there is one, of what COVID has done. It did cause us to slow down as a nation, reassess at every level of our being.
Well, and it helps us kind of to focus on the important things.
Oh, absolutely.
So much was taken away so fast.
Right.
It felt like we were forced to slow down, but I think we had a deep appreciation for the choices we had to make that came from that. And I believe it's going to take a long time to look back, I know, and understand the changes that will happen globally because of this. But in the long run, I believe they will be good.
Oh, absolutely.
And they start in everyone's home and with everyone's family,
And with every person,
with every person.
every individual taking action.
This morning I was looking, I love quotes, I have about 10 billion of them on my computer, but I found one by Arthur Ashe, 2 A's, made me chuckle. It says, and I love this because it works, start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. It's very simple, but I believe it can be a mantra that works for all of our A's and leading into our next discussion, which will come.
Right. So I think in wrapping up and closing, what we're going to focus on again is recapping some of the A's for today. Acknowledgement, authenticity, armor, accountability, affirmations, appreciation,
Action.
actions, amygdala, living within that sensorial part of our brain that allows us to go from 0 to 100 in a hot minute because of the lack of regulation. I think in looking at resiliency, remember, resiliency is an action and it is a choice. Now, a lot of things have to be put into place for folks to be able to come to a resilient-minded way of life. And those are supports. Those are, again, accountability of those around us and of ourselves. What we would like for you to focus on after listening to this for this week, you know what? Sit down, take out a pencil and a piece of paper. Have a conversation with your kids, with your significant other, with your coworkers, with your church folks. What are your A's? And if you don't have any, or let's back up, if you do have them, but they're all in a negative light, how can you reframe those A's to make them a little bit positive to help you to move forward toward a more resilient-minded way of life?
And I go again to the affirmation piece. Affirm yourself and affirm those around you, because everything will be better if we acknowledge that we're all strong people. And really, resiliency is all about hope and looking forward to another good day, and that we believe, we know in our heart of hearts that things will get better, minute by minute, hour by hour, and day by day, if we all stay strong.
Thank you, Chris. And in closing, we would like to say thank you for joining us for the first podcast of 26 Letters to Resilient-Minded Living. We hope that you take stock of your A's. Please start thinking about your B's. What are the B's in your life that are going to help you to progress forward? And we look forward to tuning in again to the second episode of 26 Letters to Resilient-Minded Living.
Have a great day. Bye.